Let's talk sciatica. Very common. You know, we did a study and we looked to see what do chiropractors treat the most. What do you think the number one thing is? No big surprise. Low back. Well, with a low back goes sciatica. Here's some things that you need to know about sciatica. Number one, if the pain goes below the knee, you probably got a disc involvement. Jim Cox, my friend from Flexion Distraction, was the first one that I heard talk a great deal about that, and he talks about discs all the time. But when the pain is below the knee, then you have a possible disc problem. Now, the other thing to know about sciatica and treating it, and that's this. If you have a right pelvic deficiency and you have pain down the opposite leg, that's the most common sciatica problem. Right short leg, pain down the left leg, that's the most common sciatica problem. You see those all the time. You wish you could have 100 a day of those. When you see somebody come in with a right pelvic deficiency, but the pain goes down the right leg, that's a problem case. Those are the ones that take longer to get well. So when you're talking to patients, when you give them a treatment plan, people always ask, what's your treatment plan? We have a standard treatment plan. That is every other day for the first 2 weeks. Then we start deciding if it's starting to balance, and we start cutting them twice a week, then down to once a week. That's kind of where we stop at once a week. By that time, they're usually balanced and they're feeling much better. Somebody asked me one time, why don't you go to once a month? Well, a once a month plan doesn't work. Why? Because other things get involved. And as soon as patients are pain-free, what happens? They don't come on their scheduled time. So, on that chronic patient, just remember, if it's on the same side as pelvic deficiency, you've got a patient that's going to take more time. And so what I usually tell them is, they say, you know, the question they always ask is when they come up off the table is, how long is this going to take? My answer to them, you can't use this answer, it's mine. The answer that I use is, it takes 2 weeks to heal a cut, 9 months to have a baby, and you're someplace in between. In other words, I look at them and say, I don't know. And then if they've really been chronic, I say, give me a month for every year that you've had this. That kind of sets their head. Now, the other thing that I want you to know is when a patient comes in and you adjust them on a Monday, you don't want them back on Tuesday because you want the body to do some work. Now, I just had a patient here the other day, came in, short right leg, got shorter, had really a bad neck, didn't have any idea about her low back, and then I started to quiz her. She said, yes, I've had a low back and for years and years and years. She was only 50 years old. And so I adjusted her on a Monday. She called up on Tuesday and said she was really in pain. I said, come on, and I made the mistake of testing her on Tuesday. And she had about half of it. I should have left it alone. I adjusted that fourth lumbar, and she really got sore the next day. So that's why we do every other day. Let them have a day in between. So when they come in on a Wednesday, I'll say to them something like, is anything special bothering today? And they'll say, well, it's much better today. But if I would have had you yesterday, and I used to say to them, that's why we didn't have you yesterday, because we didn't want to listen to you complain. I'm only kidding. But that's why you give them a day in between for the body to heal. Now, one more thing that we're going to do is there's a stretch that you do on sciatica, and I'm going to show that to you now. There's one other thing I want to show you. It's a home exercise that's very good for patients when they have sciatica because they get so tight. If the pain's going down the right leg, the patient simply leans back and takes their right leg and stretches it as far as they can stretch it. They put it back down. They do that again, and they'll feel it in the low back. And the more they lean back, the more they feel it. Put it back down and relax. That's the stretch that we use in a sciatica that's extremely tight.